Happy Sunday, everybody. Hopefully that was not an obnoxious commercial. Um, Welcome to episode 5 of Officer Chat. I'm Try, with Andro and Destiny as usual. Today we're going to be talking about, a hot button topic, the Mythic Plus dungeon, Keystone dungeon, however you want to refer to it, situation in Season 1 and within our own guild. So Destiny, what are we looking at today? What's on the menu?
Well, let's start with the basics and we'll go from there. Previously, we've talked about how much you both like the new dungeons, but part of that could have been excitement over having the new content after spending so much time in the BFA dungeons. So what do you think now that you've had a few weeks pushing progression for keys in the new environments?
2 thumbs up. 10 stars.
Definitely
would
love
recommend.
some. Definitely love some. Definitely don't much.
I like it more than I liked BFA, I think. I like the new dungeons. The Covenant abilities add something to them in my mind, and some of the new affixes are a ton of fun to play around with. I don't know, I think there's always going to be less than ideal circumstances surrounding anything, but I'm way more in the boat of I like it than I don't.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the dungeons this time around are made much more for Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
You have to, like, anybody that you want to bring, like, there's pros and cons, and I like that.
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be that cookie cutter meta, right? Like, I saw it on the MDI. You have to bring a hunter, a rogue, and a shaman, otherwise you're doing it wrong. Like, you can't ever stop that from existing. But I do like that there's not really wrong choices now. There is maybe numerically a singular optimal choice, but nobody's bad. I like that. Like, there is some value in almost every configuration.
I do really like that every expansion there is one boss in Mythic Dungeons that I cannot stay alive for. In Legion, it was the boss before what's her name in the place, the underwater place with the tentacles. It was the boss before
Harboron
her.
is the one you couldn't.
Harboron,
yeah.
thank you. And then it was the first boss in Shrine of the
Adderus and Aspix.
Temple.
Yep.
Yeah, and this one is the round balcony boss in Sanguine Depths. So, I'm nothing if not consistent.
That's true. Yeah, consistency is a virtue sometimes.
Yeah, Sanguine Depths is definitely like the new King's Rest. Every single boss in that dungeon is brutal.
Yeah.
And it's rough.
Is rough.
But I like it because it has a relatively forgiving timer compared to other dungeons that are like very challenging but also super tight. I feel like you could have a wipe in Sanguine and still make the key as long as everybody's moving quickly. Whereas something like we found at the other side is just one of those, like, I'm not saying you have to be perfect, but pretty close.
Yeah, definitely.
With all new dungeons, they also brought in some new and returning affixes, as well as let some affixes go that we don't have to worry about anymore. Let's talk about these two separately, starting with the affixes that we all came to know and loathe in BFA. Which affixes were done away in Shadowlands, and which received changes for the new Mythic Plus scene?
Gone are Teeming and Skittish, I think, which I never had to deal with as a tank, but yeah. I'm guessing Andro doesn't miss Skittish.
Well, yeah, like I liked Skittish, right? Because as a monk, I don't have a whole lot of problems with that. Every single one of my abilities is like largely an indiscriminate AoE. And that only got buffed with Necrolords and Bone Dust Brew. So I liked Skittish. I thought it was an interesting thing that tanks had to deal with. Teeming, I definitely like that they went away with that. Not because I hated it. Like, I actually liked a lot the way that it made you think about dungeons differently and different trash percentages. I liked that shakeup, but the trash and the difficulty of the trash in this expansion is way more than it was in BFA, and teaming would just make some pulls impossible.
Yeah. They changed before we get into new ones, I think they changed Bursting, Volcanic, Sanguine, Grievous, Explosive. Mostly the prevailing theory was just having damage scale with key level rather than maximum hit points, which I mean, that's just better in a like at a glance readable kind of way. It makes more sense that the bursting affix will just be harder in a 12 than it is in a 6. Like, it didn't make any sense that really once you hit that affix at I think it was at a 4 or higher, like it was always just gonna truck the healer's job. Like, he was just boned from a 4 on, and really like at a 12 there was times where we were like, okay, please don't apply power word fortitude because that makes bursting worse. Like, that is a very counterintuitive system where it's like you want your tank to have lower hit points, question mark? That seems stupid. So I like it just scales with key level. That makes a lot more sense. It's much more readable. Quality of life changes, like making Sanguine only last 20 seconds instead of 60, made this week very interesting. Last week, this week, they all blend together. I think this is Sanguine. Yeah.
Still this week. Yep.
Yeah. I feel like we've done so many keys this week.
It's been a really long week.
Yeah, it has been. But like that's fun. So if you had like a bad boss arena pull that went really sideways, like instead of having to basically resign yourself to a dead key, like if you had filled up, the Council of Captains whole arena was just like if you had pulled 3 packs and killed them all there, like pockmarked, Jackson Pollock, you were screwed. Like, that key was dead. You had to wait 60 seconds for that Sanguine to despawn, or worse, wipe trying to dance around it. 20 seconds is far more reasonable. If you make mistakes, yes, the mobs are going to heal. Yes, people will die if they stand in it, but it's not like infinitely punishing. So I like those changes.
Yeah, there's a lot of mobs too that are super hard to move around.
Yes.
So, as a monk, being able to rely on my Ring of Peace constantly is not necessarily always a thing anymore. And it's definitely changed like how we approach things and how we look at the damage patterns and that kind of stuff. Necrotic weeks used to be, I can just take 30 stacks Ring of Peace and then sit over here 5 yards away for 20 seconds. Now it's, no, we're Ring of Peacing early because that big mod in that pack isn't impacted by Ring of Peace. So it's definitely changing things. I think the Sanguine kind of goes with that, where the way that we're approaching trash is different, and the Sanguine works with it better.
Yeah.
You're punished for it, but at the same time, it rewards better play even more, right?
Yeah, and I just like that consistency in messaging, where it's like if this was your very first key and you had never done it, it would make more sense than previous incarnations of those affixes.
That's a great segue into the new affixes. What are they and how do they work?
There are several. Andro, why don't you take Prideful since you've had the most experience dealing with it?
Yeah, so Prideful's fun. It is the seasonal affix, so like at the end of BFA we had the pillars and the skips. It's kind of like that, where every 20% of trash, you get an extra mob to play with. And he tries very hard to kill you, which is fun. And as a reward for defeating the Prideful manifestation, you get a huge damage buff, and also healers get free mana, which is amazing.
That is fun.
So, it's really changed things up, because you gotta think about kind of like the reaping from BFA. You have to think about where you're killing trash breakpoints and making sure that you're not in the middle of a huge trash pack when a Prideful mob spawns, and deal with that.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to take Spiteful, since that is my new most favorite affix. Starting at level 4 and above, Spiteful spawns shitty little truck you in the face ads. When mobs die, they will randomly, well, I think there might be a bit of rhyme or reason to how they target who they target, but little mob spawn, they're draining 8% of their health every second. If they touch you at a higher key, they're definitely going to kill you. At a lower key, you may be able to defensive and run, but the idea is to run away from them, or to have somebody kite slow, stun, CC them in some way. That's part of why I like it, because I feel like for a number of expansions, I've had some utility, but not a ton as a druid. Like, my utility was like, oh, the guy enraged, I dispel the enrage. Like, it's important, but it's not fun, and there's nothing like visually like where the whole party goes, oh, thank God he was here, that made that so much easier. But as I'm bear tanking, like between Ursula's Vortex and Mass Root, like when I'm tanking a good Spiteful week, I feel like I am single-handedly making that key smoother because I can, vortex and root those spiteful ads, and they just kill themselves. That was the hardest thing I think to get across to everybody. That first couple of dungeons was like, don't touch them. They literally will just die on their own. You can completely ignore them. If you have a speed boost, you can outrun them. If we can slow them, even better. If we can leave them CC'd and trapped, that's the best. But it's just so punishing because it's like you forget. You pound it into your head at the beginning of the dungeon. Don't kill 8 things and then stand in melee. Don't kill 8 things and then stand in melee. I killed 8 things and now I'm dead. Or like those, the big pull and Plaguefall just before Glubtrog, where it's like, I'm going to grab all these oozes, and then you think, oh my god, that's going to be 36 spiteful ads. We have to play this very cleanly. So I like that affix a lot, yeah.
One of my favorite things in that dungeon is trying to kill all those oozes at the same time and having 30 spiteful ads.
Yeah, and it's like it's not difficult. It's a little bit silly, but I like it because it's just one of those you execute this correctly or you die. There's not like a lot of middle ground. There's not a lot of finesse to it. It's just kind of a brute force response. But I like that.
Yeah. At that same level is inspiring. What is that affix?
That's
like beguiling. Andrew, why don't you talk about that one?
Yeah, so it's like beguiling, the where a mob in trash packs will get buffed, and basically causes everybody around him to become immune to CC. So interrupt, stuns, hard CC, just totally immune to that. And it's not as bad as beguiling because it's not an extra pack, and it can be handled the same way, which I think is good. We found a lot of success in CCing that ad and pulling the trash away. They seem to have done a pretty good job with making the inspiring mob either a clearly handleable by CC it, run everything away, or they make the dangerous mob the inspiring mob, and you can continue to interrupt him, nuke him down, take care of the rest of the pack. So it's pretty interesting. They didn't overdo it like they did beguiling, I think, and it really makes you think about how you do those trash packs a little bit more.
Yeah, we were afraid there were going to be like just some classic just FU pulls where they add an extra mob and now you already had to stun and CC 4 things in there and it was a nightmare. Now it's an impossible pull. I like that in Halls of Atonement it is the Hunt Master that was going to do the Loyal Beasts, which is somebody you were going to fixate and primarily burn down anyway. So now it's like do we have the DPS to get her dead before the first Loyal cast because we will not be able to stun this? Or do we approach it differently and do we root the dogs far behind her and just drag her around a corner and take our time with it? Like you say, it's one of those, it changes how you look at it, but it's not, there was nothing this week anyway, or last week, that I found was impossible. There were no just giant middle finger from Blizzard pulls.
Yeah, the hardest pull that I ran into, I think last week, was that you couldn't really CC to handle, was in Theater of Pain. One of the platform jumps that you go to, there's an inspiring mob, and the mages or sorcerers or whatever they are and the necromancers just do an absolute ton of damage if you can't get interrupts off. And yeah, at a higher key level, one of those volleys go off and it's a rough time. But
yeah.
That happens once, it's going to happen, you got to burn the trash down, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
And the last one, right? There's one
Storming,
more?
yeah. Which I like, because I feel like there were a number of affixes in the past, and there continue to be a number of affixes that, like, indiscriminately, or disproportionately rather, affect range. This one seems to be worse for melee. It creates little vortexes of wind and lightning that do a significant amount of damage if you are foolhardy enough to stand in them. They also knock you around a bit. So it's important to sort of watch your footing for the whole dungeon. And it just gets really tricky on like smaller hitbox bosses when you've got a tank plus 2 or 3 melee DPS. Like, there is no great place to stand, which I both love and hate. Like, for every time I was the only ranged healer in a volcanic week where I was just dodging, 16 to 20 volcanics every 30 seconds, this feels a lot more like a melee problem where well, as a tank, I guess it is my problem now, but in the past it was just, this looks like something I could largely ignore, because as range, you don't really care. You just move out of the circumference of that cyclone and you're done, but it's just one of those heads-up things that I think Blizzard likes to throw out there. You pay attention or you die, and like that is the most simple don't stand in bad stuff mechanic that has ever existed in the world of Warcraft, and yet it still kills people. You got to appreciate the simplicity there.
Yeah, it does. In getting hit by those stormings, it knocks you up, and that will absolutely kill you in some places.
Yeah.
We found that the blue safe zone in Spires on Devos, one of those stormings will knock you up out of that blue zone because that is not a vertical zone.
That is both funny and awful.
Yeah, it does. My only criticism with it, because I like it too, I think it promotes movement around, it promotes situational awareness and all that, and I like that. I think that's something that we need more of. The third boss that we normally do in the other side, the dealer, super punishing if you have 3 melee, which is kind of unfortunate. You're dropping the bounce traps all in the same spot. You've got all the stormings in the same spot. It gets real messy. So, but those are kind of echoing the theme of all these Mythic Plus. That's so rare that happens. And 1-2 cases where it's really challenging, totally fine.
Yeah.
If it were 4 dungeons that were just brutal because you have 3 melee, then we'd probably be telling a different tune.
Yeah. And it's kind of a choose your own adventure, right? Like, often you have access to 5 keys, and if there's a narrow corridor one with storming, then maybe you don't do that one. A lot of it is kind of in your hands. But I don't want to talk ahead of us, so. I think storming is my least favorite of the new affixes, though, for sure. I don't think it brings anything unique to the table. I love the design of Don't Stand in Bad, but I feel like it hasn't really significantly altered many gameplay decisions for me.
So, since we just talked about the affixes, I want to touch on this just a little bit. At what level are you currently considering like fun run versus progression keys for you personally?
Oh, for me, fun is like a 5 to 7, and like I'm gonna be like tight sphinctered for the next 35 minutes is like a 12 or higher probably.
Yeah, I think around the same. 7 is feels pretty good. I think.
Shay said it best. She said the other day that she wished we could hurry up and outgear the content so we can go back to just slamming stuff. And like, for where we are right now, I feel like that's a 7, right?
You.
Where we can.
Yes.
We're doing the critical mechanics and nothing else, and we're still timing those dungeons.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Like. 7, 8 start getting difficult. 8 start getting into that range of like, oh, you missed that kick and now you're dead. Yeah. Not, oh, you missed the kick and hopefully you learned something. And yeah, we've had like the easiest dungeon that we've been in is Miss, and yeah, that we're topping out, like we're failing 12s is where we're at. Like we have, plus or minus a little bit, and that is, I'm pressing every button on my bar to try to stay alive. Yep. We're off healing. We're not having enough interrupts and dying because of it. We're, one mistake is a wipe, and the only time that we get through those keys clean is when we literally have no mistakes, and we hardly ever do that.
Yeah. I like you're at that level of difficulty where you're opening the dungeon journal, you're going to WoW and being like, what is this ability even? What does Bone Spike do? How did that kill me? I like that level of difficulty.
Missing a critical component
right.
of this
where it's
gameplay.
Like previously, in the 2s, in the 7s, you're like, I don't care what that does. But then when it's just like, and I'm dead again. Okay, combat log, what killed me? I've never heard of this ability.
Yeah, case in point was that the other side that we ran, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a big pack, the third pole in that dungeon. It's a big pack. We know it. I torpedo in. I was dead.
Yep.
Like, I'm a tank with
I got
50,000
this.
hit points. I was dead. We looked at the logs. I got 2 hot ticks, and John was mid cast on a regrowth. Nothing.
That was
I was dead.
it.
Like, okay, what the hell happened? Like,
This might be pretty serious, guys.
Yeah. So before we go a little bit deeper, we've talked previously in the last officers chat. Andro shared some really great advice on maximizing your Great Vault. Since the topic is Mythic Plus this week, let's revisit the Great Vault and how to optimize it with weekly key runs. Specifically, what should players be doing each week to get the most from their vault?
I think the advice we gave last time remains the same. If you are one of the characters or players, wow, fully immersive. If you're one of those characters, if you're a player who has zero playtime, I mean, like you are literally just raid logging, and occasionally maybe one day a week you can get some keys or some farming done, and that is your life. You have 5 hours a week to play WoW. Then on our Mythic Monday or whenever you have your playtime available, get the highest key you're comfortable doing done. That's done and dusted with extremely limited playtime. Beyond that, I think our advice of having options is still extremely valid, especially with dead legendary slots. You just want choices. So, our goal, I think, that we echoed was if you can try to get 4 7s done, that gives you 2 very reasonable options, especially once we start killing 4 heroic bosses weekly, then you'll have 3 very reasonable upgrade possibilities. But I still think more is better than 1 high one. Just because I've gotten 5 gloves out of the last 12 options.
yeah, with the loot situation in Shadowlands, it's really painful, and like the priority is really the ability to change or to trade loot. The worst thing is getting a 210 out of your chest and then going into heroic and not being able to trade a 3 eye level upgrade. And the plus 7s get you the heroic level gear out of the chest. Being able to slot in that heroic level gear lets you trade heroic gear in Nathria. Like that is the most helpful thing that anybody can do. Like that, and giving more options to spread out that gear is like super, super, super important.
I really love the macro. I don't know where that originated, but I'm super grateful that you guys have shared it multiple times in Discord, because at first I was like, I don't need that.
I have it up on screen now.
I don't need that. Eventually I opened it and I was like, this is amazing. Where have you been all my whole life?
Yeah, I know Cole shared it, Andrew shared it in Discord, but there's the macro on screen now, and this is what it looks like. It'll open up your Great Vault progress wherever you are in the world, and it will update every time you log in or log out and back in. So I guess if you were looking to truly min-max your progress on the Great Vault, there's making sure that if you're close to the next loot option, get that 4th or 9th or 10th dungeon done if you're sitting at 3 or 9. Find a way to get one more run in that week, and look at item level breakpoints, I guess. If you've got 3 7s and a 4, yes, you're getting your second option for the week, but maybe you find one more 7 to run, so you've got 2 options at that heroic item level. But that's maybe more min-maxing than it needs to be. Definitely just try to get as many 7s as you can comfortably do. If that was one takeaway, I guess that would be it. More is better.
Anything you want to add to that, Andrew, before we move on?
Nope. That's about it. And we can the other thing too is we can do 7s with anybody, right? We're not quite at the point yet where we can start carrying people through 10s. So 7s we can do all day with anybody who wants to go. And that's really, really helpful. Grab a group together, go run a 7.
All right, so we've covered dungeons and affixes. Going one step further, what pathing and pacing tips have you picked up so far that can really help when trying to beat that timer?
Yeah, this is another one that Shadowlands took a different approach than BFA. There's some dungeons that are super clear. Do this, do this, do that. They're super easy. You don't have a lot of wiggle room. And then there's some dungeons like Plaguefall or Halls of Atonement or Necrotic Wake where, every time I go into that dungeon with a different group, there's a different route, and it's all interesting. It's all good. And like personally, I like talking about that stuff with Reskin and I know a couple other people have reached out on how do we plan routes and how do we think about it. At the beginning of some of our runs, I know I've been kind of talking through the thought process as we're getting into higher keys. We spend probably 10 or 15 minutes before those keys talking about the route and talking about pros and cons and looking at different things, how to get maybe a prideful on a trash pack instead of a boss, where percentage is coming from, all that kind of stuff. I'm liking it a lot more as part of Shadowlands. There's some bugs in MDT and the tooling that makes it difficult and kind of random sometimes, but we're also learning those too and learning how to handle that.
Another perfect plague fall at exactly 100.02, no, 99.8%. Awesome. Run and find the Eye of Maldraxxus.
Yeah, Plagueful, I still just don't with that dungeon.
Yeah, and it's like one of those. I like having skip options for a confident group of people who understand how it's going to work, where it's going to work. There has always been the bring a rogue or have an invisibility potion options for skips, but there are yes, you have the Arden Wield skip in Mists, but I also there are some of those dungeons where if you have a monk that can paralyze and Ring of Peace something out of the way, or if you have a priest that can mind soothe, you can skip a whole pack, and just being aware that your class can do that is super helpful. Or if you're just in a group with that person, be aware that maybe you don't pull ahead of that person because he might be thinking he wants to do a skip, or just talking about that before the key even goes in. Hey, we're in Spires of Ascension. Are we going to be skipping that pack at the top of the stairs? Should I pull extra beforehand? Should I go 2 mobs to the left instead of just 1? I think those are all, they can be huge time saves, especially if you're skipping what would otherwise be a giant time sink in terms of a bad boss or a bad trash pull or a trash pull that you don't have the stuns or interrupts to handle. But it's like anything, it's about communication.
Yeah, there's also Mists of Tyrannus Scythe is an interesting one where the trash that you get through the maze is different every run. You can get upwards of 4, basically a whole pack of trash extra or short in that path. And I think that's interesting too. I'm glad they only did it in one dungeon, because it would be frustrating if we have to think about all those different options and ways to handle it. But they really threw everything in Shadowlands. There's any way that you can think of a pathing for a dungeon to go, they have those options in at least one dungeon.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked, like you're saying, if everything was plus or minus 5%. That would be frustrating, but it's kind of fun because you'll have those runs where every single one of the maze packs was that 5 pull, and then you get to the end and you do Tredova and you're done. There's no more extra staghorns, there's no more extra anything, no flying wasps. That's fun. Or then sometimes where it's just the 3 pulls and a single boss, and you're like, I'm at 91%. We have to find 9% after Tredova, or we pull it before if it's a prideful situation. It's fun because it's that improvisation that happens in the moment where you can't really know for sure until you're there. I like that.
Yep.
And some dungeons seem to be easier depending on whether it's a fortified or tyrannical week. So which dungeons have you found so far to be best for those 2 affixes?
It's that
all of them are better on fortified.
It's
all of them.
Yeah, there are a couple of dungeons where the bosses are so rough that tyrannical makes those dungeons less desirable. And I can't think, there might be one, but I can't think, like T said, I can't think of one dungeon where I would much rather deal with empowered bosses than I would do with empowered trash. Plus, there's so many more options. Fortified is that stereotypical push week, especially if there are non-complementary affixes. If there's no synergy between the secondary and tertiary affixes, then Fortified is way easy, because if there's a problematic pack, you just skip it, right? If it can't be beat by your group comp, you just skip it. You can't do that with a boss. We can't go back to Adderus and Aspects and be like, well, our Frost Mage cannot do this fight. We'll just skip it. Like that's not a thing you can do. Whereas Fortified, yeah, even the worst trash packs, you can either, pre-plan a different route, or you can plan to skip, or you can stun, which, like there are just options that aren't available to you with a tyrannical boss.
Yeah, I was looking at the dungeon list. I don't.
Are you guys only saying that because teaming isn't a thing anymore?
Yeah,
possibly. So yeah, I mean, possibly like a good teaming raging kind of week, like maybe that would have changed my mind, but
Teaming fortified raging, no thank you.
So most of the dungeons have a boss that's like a DPS check, right? Where, for example, the first boss of Miss is like, you could spend 10 minutes on that boss. Like, as long as you don't die, you're gonna kill it. So it's more about like, sure, how much DPS can you do, but you're not on a clock really, other than the dungeon timer. Whereas the last boss of Miss is brutal. Like, the longer that fight goes on, the worse that fight gets. And it's a DPS check. There's only a handful of dungeons, I think, that aren't like that. Theater of Pain is okay. Plaguefall is brutal on Tyrannical. Necrotic Wake is okay as well. And Spires, well, actually no, Spires is bad. The other side is, if you can get through Hakar on the other side, you're fine. Like, but Hakar is one of those too, where it's a DPS check if you're going to hit a point where you can't get the shields down fast enough. So there's not a whole lot of like, yeah, this is an easy dungeon on Tyrannical. No, all of them are, okay, there is a boss, and if we can't get through that boss,
yeah.
Halls of Atonement's good. There's no boss in Halls of Atonement that's a hard DPS check, which is nice.
I like Halls of Atonement, but I think that's probably the easiest dungeon in the whole expansion.
Yeah.
It can
Very
be like,
forgiving boss.
If you don't, we did it. I tanked it in a pug as a 12 without a Venthyr and without heroism. It can be brutal. Like, if you are not able to, manipulate those loyal Stoneborn to fight for you, and you don't have like good group composition, it can be a challenging place. I think like we're fortunate in that you and I tend to run a lot of stuff together, so it's like I always have at least one Venthyr. So there's every one of those troublesome packs or even remotely challenging bosses has, that sand breath doing 40% of your total damage every time. You take that away and it gets a little more interesting.
We recently found, speaking of Covenant abilities in dungeons, that priests can power infusion the
Stoneborns.
The Stoneborns, and while that Stoneborn is up, Rob definitely does more damage than everybody else as the healer. Yep. It's great. So yeah, super important, super valuable.
All right. In addition to targeting the best dungeons for affixes for the key that you're about to run, what are other ways that the teams can optimize for the best chance of success?
If you're talking about where victory isn't certain, if you're talking about wherever your like level of challenge is at, if you are a group that's struggling at 5 or a group that's struggling at 15, I think it's worth looking at group composition. I think most importantly, like the single greatest thing you can do is play to your Covenant dungeon strengths. If you're going to do the other side, consider making sure that you've got a Night Fae with you. The urns are huge. They make the dungeon so much nicer. You can interrupt the Tiki Mask's Fury ability. You can stun the big 5 Frontal Cone Caster pack. Like, these are big options that make the dungeon significantly easier. So if you don't have a Night Fae, then maybe the Ardenweald dungeons are just, I don't want to say dead to you, but like if you're trying to push something really high, maybe you just look at playing to your group's strengths. I'm not saying you should kick a guy because he's not Night Fae, but if you've got a Sanguine Depths key and 2 Venthyr in your group, maybe you don't try the other side this week and instead you try, Halls of Atonement or Sanguine Depths, where you're going to be getting a little bit of an advantage numerically. And then just consumables, right?
The other thing too, Yeah, consumables are huge too. What I was going to say is, it depends a lot on how many keys you're doing as well, because like we've said, like loot is a problem this expansion. You're getting half the loot if you don't time the key. So try to do stuff that you're timing. Like you want to find where that balance is, where, you just plus 2 that 7, but that means you're going to fail the 9 or might fail the 9. It's better to get 2 pieces of loot on the 8 if you knock it down 1, or 2 pieces of loot on the 7 than it is 1 piece of loot on the 9. You'll progress much faster. You'll get more loot, get that scale, like Shay had said, outgear the content a little bit, not 100%, but
well, yeah, especially like you say, if it gives me an
move
extra
up
piece.
Faster.
Yeah, there's no reason not to have more fun and more loot at the expense of 3 potential item levels on a might be upgrade at the end of the week. Like, it just makes more sense, I think, to be smart about how you're targeting stuff.
Sventi's in chat brought up a good point too, that the last boss in Halls of Atonement can be hell with a 4 melee group, and I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that last boss in Halls of Atonement with a Death Knight, amazing. With anti-magic zone, makes that fight so much easier.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember if I've ever been there with 4 melee, but I could see that being like okay, well, do you want me to do damage or do you want me to not stand and stuff? Because
you can have one or the other. You can't have both. That sounds like how I play.
Yeah, I ran that dungeon with Peelmon and Savane, and I think it was last week. I think it was Tyrannical, and man, Anti-Magic Zone made that fight a joke. That's was so awesome. Good.
Yeah, like that's my favorite place to go with Destiny and Phyllectra, just because the double Venthyr Covenant, and I mean they're both a delight to have on comms, but just I can't. Having run it one time now without a Venthyr, I will never do that again. Like it was just. It had been my most favorite dungeon, yeah, probably an easier dungeon, and it was just so much harder and stupid. That way, I'm never doing it again. I can't go back.
Yeah. That dungeon, the way that we run it, is pretty rough on Sanguine, and it's also pretty rough on Spiteful, because we do that jump off the little edge, and then you don't have any room to drop anything. That becomes fun. Finding that out, like in the middle of trying to push a new level, and you jump off and go, I need to figure out where I'm going to put like 8 sanguine puddles in the next 40 seconds. I love that kind of stuff. It's fun.
Oh, I am so happy you guys do.
Yeah.
We all play the game the way we enjoy it the most.
That's true. Everybody should endeavor to anyway.
So we've touched on introductory and intermediate topics pertaining to Mythic Plus content. Let's move into advanced strats. Once they've mastered everything else, what are some other ways that a player can level up their Mythic Plus game?
Well, we talked a little bit about it last time. My biggest advice would be, like, everything can be beaten in any aspect of life, really, with equipment, knowledge, and experience. Like,
gear.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Gear is certainly a factor, right? If I wanted to do a 15 in time, I'm not going to walk in on my 166 character who just capped and say, I'm ready. Somebody out there, I'm sure, can do it. Not me, but I'm sure somebody could. But for me, who's, below that perfect threshold, I have to look at outgearing some of the content, or at least being appropriately geared for the content. So gear is a factor. Skill is a factor. What I mean by that is learning your class inside and out. And when I say class, I don't just mean the one spec you like. So we sometimes have a situation where if you're looking to be in that advanced group, if you're looking to push, 10 tens a week in time, there will be moments where someone's going to have to ask you to probably do something you don't want to do. Or at least do something that you're not already currently doing. Like I have done 10s and above, both as a tank and as a healer. It's about being comfortable with multiple specs. If somebody said, hey, we know that you primarily play Frost and Raid, but we need Fire's Combustion to get this, tricky, to kill every Prideful in time, for example. if you're looking to play at that level, it behooves you to be comfortable enough with each of those specs that as the group's needs change, you're comfortable making those changes, being adaptable, knowing that, you know, if elemental damage is just garbage in this dungeon, then maybe, you know, Reskin goes goes Resto for this one, and somebody else becomes the healer. Like, having a group that is that mutable, that flexible, can be very, very helpful. But it's all about just knowing every spell in your book and when it can and can't be used.
Yeah, I've definitely found that I'm using a lot more buttons as the monk than I would previously. You know, when we talk about, oh, I got trucked in that pack, or there's this hard pack that I have to start kiting, like, you have to look at what tools are available. There's still tools that I'm not using just because, like, oh, I've never had to use this before. Well, I need to go back and I need to read my class and, you know, read the fine print on all of those abilities and try to find out where we can eke out a little bit of more damage reduction. Oh, like, for example, for me, Invoke Nuazu, the Black Ox, for me, is an actual damage, like, it's a DPS cooldown, but it helps my damage intake. It reduces the stagger that I take. So stuff like that on those harder pulls, like, those optimizations are super important. It's the difference between, you know, a 12 and a 13 in time. One of the things too is, like, I'm a huge proponent of run more keys, and try to get groups together, just run more and more and more and more keys. Like, I like the experience piece. I was talking to Feisty the other day about a couple of our runs, because he asked me that same question. You know, how do I know what key level I should be doing to maximize, you know, learning and that kind of stuff? And the example that I gave him was, you know, forget about the key number. It's all about, you know, well, are you timing the key when you go +1? Are you timing that one? Even at, you know, the keys that we're doing at 11s and 12s, like, we are at the same point that everybody else is at. You're going to find that you can time 5s and not 6s. Well, we can time 11s and not 12s. You know, and then you go down to key level and you're 2-chesting it, and just seeing where that is, running a ton of keys. I have, you know, 100 keys run this expansion so far, and I think that's a huge part of it, and that's how you gain the experience, and you get loot. Shockingly, right. You get loot from running keys, so it kind of feeds into itself.
It does, and it's like also
breaking news.
It's the to speak one more point tied to the knowledge component, is that sometimes you'll get a 6 in time, you'll 2-chest a 6, you'll go right into an 8, and you'll miss it by 10 minutes. You wiped on the same trash pull 3 times, everybody run back. So not only did you find that for that particular group's time and, you know, that little slice of time and space, you guys are looking at targeting 7s, you should also always know why you wiped, right? Sometimes I'm with groups, especially in pug groups, where it's like, I don't even fucking understand what's happening. This is ridiculous. I'm out. This tank is trash. This healer is garbage. And it's like, honestly, it's probably something as simple as collect souls isn't being interrupted. That's, you know, I've been here 100 times and I've never seen 10 little souls running around. What are we doing wrong? And it's like, but yes, because somebody somewhere was interrupting that collect souls. Always know why it went wrong so that it doesn't go wrong next time. There's no harm in making mistakes in life or in video games or anything else, but I think the only crime comes in repeating those mistakes over and over again.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even know that they're happening until you get to a higher level.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That same repetition, like, yeah, we knew this pack was hard. I've never had a problem with it before. This time I torpedo in and I die in less than 3 seconds.
Right.
Like, what happened?
Even on a 9, I was face pulling this stuff and it was not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
One other thing too. This is going to sound a lot like one of my raid diatribes, but often you will find a cookie cutter spec online. Someone who ran the key as a +20 in an elite guild of like-minded individuals will give you, this is your Mythic Plus, you know, build. This is what everybody's doing. This is what you need to be doing. And I think wholesale, that's probably true. Like, these are people who have crunched the numbers. They've given you the biggest numerical advantage. But there will be times where you have to choose suboptimal talents, or at least different choices than the cookie cutter build, which if you read the fine print like down Icy Vange's page, or on page 2 of the Wowhead article, it will absolutely tell you this stuff. But I think a lot of people just snapshot the lines of talents and say, here's my build, and then it's like we get to a necrotic week and I say, okay, give me Treants. Oh, I didn't take that. Well, why wouldn't you take it on necrotic week? Like, for me as a druid for many years, that is a cardinal sin. Like, that is one of the reasons back in Legion you would even deign to bring a balanced druid to keys, was because of the Treants. And to have somebody tell me like that Nature's Balance or whatever, it does more DPS, it's like, it's never been about DPS with the Treants, it's about a 10-second tank break. Like, he gets to drop his necrotic stacks, or in a dangerous fortified pull, like, that's an external tank cooldown on a 60-second, yeah, anyway. So that's not going to show up always in somebody's, like, these are your best talent sheets, but you got to know. Sometimes a Shadow Priest will want that shitty Shining Force knockback. It's not ideal, but sometimes you're going to have to take it if there's no other displacement in the group. Sometimes you're going to have to talent in for a stun, even though that's not how you normally play. Like, I don't like taking Mighty Bash as a druid. Hate it. Healing, balance, or guardian, don't ever take it. I don't like its functionality. If I'm in a group where there is no other stun, I don't have a paladin, I don't have a death knight, I don't have a whoever else, a Shadow Fury from a warlock, like, I have to. Like, it doesn't matter whether I like it or not. It doesn't matter whether it's, I'm losing DPS to take it when we have to stun that loyal beast cast, because I'm not sure that out of 12 we can get that stuff down before the Gargans get empowered. Gotta have it. And so it's that being able to sort of break from the standard of these are the best, you always take the best and that's it, is super important, especially as you're approaching whatever is challenging for you as a group. You'll need to be flexible.
So this might actually be a good time, Sventies, actually, when you were talking about optimizing your talents for the runs that you were about to participate in, was asking about how, for a class like a priest who only has 1 DPS spec, how they would go about optimizing. So this might be a great time to talk about what that looks like when you're trying to pug and you're in one of those suboptimal classes like a Frost Mage.
Well, so I mean, like, speaking as a Frost Mage or as a Shadow Priest, there are 2 very distinct builds between single target and AoE. So even if it's something as simple as just talking to your group, hey guys, I don't do great DPS, but should I be focused as a single target specialist because it's a tyrannical week? Or, if everybody else is spec'd for single target, should I be using the splitting ice build and just be responsible for the trash DPS of getting us through these packs faster? Or, something as simple as saying like, hey, I don't normally take this, what is your Ring of Frozen Ice called? The Ring of Frost, is that right? Like, I don't normally play that, but
I don't play with it.
but like, this is a necrotic week, we don't have a displacement, we don't have a good slow except for Blizzard, like, what do we do? And then it's like, I run Ring of Frost. It's not on my talent sheet, it's not anybody's must choose talent sheet, but you do what you got to do. The reducing the silence interrupt cooldown for a Shadow Priest is not the cookie cutter talent, but you may have to. Like, if you are just short on interrupt rotational abilities, you might have to just get that down to the 24-second silence.
That was one of the reasons why I went to I went back to the water elemental, was for, what was it, Spiteful Week.
Yeah.
Because all of those little ads that pop up are super easy to Frost Nova, but as a mage, if I stay too close to the things that I'm trying to Frost Nova,
having a second,
it doesn't always go well for me.
Having a second Frost Nova, especially a ranged Frost Nova, is huge on those kinds of weeks where, it's not glamorous, you're not going to be number 1 in the DPS meter, but like,
and I would.
When the group does that next time without you, someone might go, well, how is this getting to me? This stuff never hit me before. And then it's like, oh, right, because we were playing in a team that was being thoughtful.
So Zafarian also asks, have you found, generally speaking, that tweaking spec and gear is important when running Mythic Plus versus Raid? He says, I think some of us get happy with our gear for raids, but something like raid bots acts like a couple of expensive tweaks would squeak out an extra 100 DPS in a dungeon.
I mean,
is it worth it?
Yeah.
I think min-maxing like that is kind of going back to your spec. Like, raid bots is going to play perfectly, and like you get a jive going with your character and you're playing that well, then that's going to just be better in dungeons than trying to swap back and forth. That being said, like, different weeks like Tyrannical week, it's probably single target. Fortified weeks, definitely AoE will get us through keys faster. But it's really just what you are comfortable with. Don't let a tool tell you, like, oh, you're going to do better if you swap this gear around.
Yeah.
Personally, like, I don't have to deal with it much as a tank. I probably should more than I do. But, you know, we're not at a point where micro optimizations for gear is really going to get us much. That the gear that you're wearing now is just going to be replaced in the next couple of weeks. So I don't think about it too much. I just push eye level because stamina and agility is still like largely the best for me. That I am a tank, but you're also going to get out of it as much as you put in. So if you're the type of person who is going to go sit on a target dummy for 2 hours to adjust, you know, a rotation because you change a talent, then that's probably going to be worth it. If you just want to get, you know, change a talent and get results, you're not going to see results.
Yeah. And also, I would caution anybody away from, like, on Tuesday night respecking out of dungeon, re-optimizing with gems and enchants for raid, only then on Sunday night to spend thousands of gold to retrofit again for that 1% advantage that Raidbot says you're going to have in Hectic Ad Cleave. I mean, I know that I'm miserly when it comes to money, but I don't think many people are in a position where they want to or should be doing that, especially since the gain, like Andrew's saying, is ostensibly very small, and just being comfortable in your choices of both gear and talents is going to yield more results than micro-optimizations in gear ever will. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you should go crazy with regemming, re-enchanting for everything that you're doing. If you're going to be doing 100 keys a week and only raiding with us one night a week, then maybe you just leave yourself built for keys. Conversely, if you're only going to be running 1 or 2 keys a week and you're going to be raiding with us, you know, both nights, then maybe you just set yourself up for raid spec and leave it alone.
Or play what makes you happy.
Yeah, or if you're lucky enough to have 2 DPS specs, you can optimize 1 for each.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. There weren't any other questions, so now might be a great time to talk about the new Mythic Plus opportunity.
So, I have an announcement to make that's based on a lot of feedback that we've heard from our guild. I guess if you are watching the stream and you are not a member of RTM, this doesn't super apply to you, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
I'll put a link in chat, and you can learn more about our guild.
But for the guild, we've been hearing a lot of feedback, and I know that some of you are tired of hearing this, and others of you will probably be hearing it for the first time, but we've gotten, as leadership, a lot of feedback that people are feeling excluded from the opportunity to run Mythic plus Keystone dungeons, or that they don't have the knowledge or expertise to perform at a high enough level that they feel like they've been left behind, or that they're just going to be a detriment, or they're going to kill the key and no one's going to like them anymore as a person. I would tell you that I think these are largely unfounded rumors, you can't invalidate someone's feelings. I can't tell you that how you're feeling is wrong, even if I think it's ridiculous. But to address those concerns, what I'd like to start doing is, on Thursday nights, doing a Mythic Dungeon Bootcamp. My intention is to be online at 6 p.m., and from 6 to 9 p.m., we'll run keys together. I'd like to get a group together, maybe Wednesday night after raid, put up a sign-up sheet. I'll need a healer and 3 DPS. It's a 100% judgment-free zone. Come as you are. The whole point of this exercise will be to learn about talent choices and consumables, about player optimization, about dungeon routing, about dangerous mobs, and how to make sure you don't accidentally pull a pat by standing too close to the left. By talking about the weekly affixes, talking about what the bosses actually do. So that way, when we've run that key, we're going to take our time. The objective will never be to get it in time. We probably will, but it's a learning environment. We're there to make sure people understand what each of the abilities do, how to make sure you're putting your best foot forward in those things, to get people knowledge and experience. Because I feel like that's all that's lacking from a lot of these people feeling comfortable to be included in a 10. We had an experience this week. So there's 2 very big differences in experiences. We have people that are running keys 30 and 40 a week, and people that are running 1 or 2 a week. And the people who are only running 1 or 2 feel like they are not getting invited to groups, or that they are not confident enough to accept an invitation to a group. And people on the other end of the spectrum, on the extreme end of the spectrum, that are doing 30 keys feel like, man, I'm on 6-7 times a week. I ask everybody in guild who wants to do a key. I linked my 10. I got no takers. There were 18 people online, and I still had to pug 2 spots. I guess people don't want to do keys. And I've been on both sides of that. I can tell you that both of those experiences are valid and true. But what I think is going to be helpful, the reason, the impetus for this decision, is that if we can get enough people in guild comfortable in keys, then I think when, Cole says, I need 3 DPS for a 10 that we're going to try to get in time, there aren't those, hesitant, reluctant hands in the air that are halfway up, like, ooh, I'd like to, but I also have never been to Plaguefall, or, he uses some 3-letter acronym for an ability, and you're like, I don't know what that is. So there's like that. It's not gatekeeping in a malicious way, but I want to try to break down any of those barriers. We all raid together. That's our assigned, group communal activity. We're a family, at least a couple of times a week. There's a lot of camaraderie here. There's a lot of goodwill. I don't ever want people to feel like they are not liked, they are not appreciated. That isn't the case. And I feel like if we can just get people a little more comfortable with the environment of Mythic Plus, the fact that it is timed, but that doesn't necessarily have to be super stressful. I've talked to a few people who want to do keys, but hate that people are always like yelling at them, go, 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 go. I mean, they're not wrong. It is a timed event. You have to go fast, especially at the higher levels of performance. We're going to need everybody on their A game. There's just no way around it. We're not in a position where, Andro can grab Cole and Rezkin and they can just time a 14 with one person who has never done a key before. I mean, there will come a time where maybe that is possible, but we're not there yet. So if you want to be playing at that level, like in Raid, you have to learn the fight. And it's just that simple. So I don't know how successful this will be. I hope this addresses some of the concerns and some of the bad feelings, which we definitely don't want. And it breaks my heart a little bit when someone tells me, I ran 0 keys this week, or I had to run exclusively with pugs because nobody likes me, the guild hates me, they all think I'm stupid and terrible and no one wants to run with me. I mean, all I can do is promise you that I don't hate you, any of you. I don't think you're incapable of performing. I mean, not to be a dick about it, I wouldn't let you in the raid if I didn't think you could perform, and if you were assholes, you wouldn't be in the guild, so, I mean, please understand that I at least like you, and I at least have, the bare minimum of faith in your ability. But I think it's a matter of comfort and experience. Like, if you just haven't run Plaguefall enough to know where all of the hazards are, then when someone says, we're going to do a 10 that we're trying to get in time, I can see the reticence, the reluctance to want to sign up for that. But if we do it enough and we can get everybody in these boot camp runs, I'd like everybody to be comfortable enough to easily raise their hand and say, I'm here, I'm online, I'd love to do it. Or like my, apple pie in the sky long-term dream would be to just have people be comfortable enough to be like, I'm going to start my own group. I have a tanking spec. I now understand how to set that up. I've got these tools. I've got routes for this dungeon that we've already run 6 times. I know what needs to be stunned and interrupted. I know what each boss does. I can teach other people. And I think if we can hit that tipping point, we'll have more groups. And that's numerically, at least, what our problem is in Guild at the moment, where we have 30 people that want to be doing keys, but we don't have 5 dedicated tanks and healers available 24/7. So I'll put out, like I say, a sign-up sheet on Wednesday night, probably just after Raid, and my goal is to start small. I think I'm going to bring my Demon Hunter that I've been playing on stream today, just so that there's not like a significant gear advantage where I could basically solo the +2 as a bear. And we'll grow and learn together. We'll do the keys, we'll learn the pulls, we'll go as far as we can go each week, and we'll talk about what went wrong, when it went wrong, and that's it. I mean, eventually everybody will get to a point where they can teach the keys to someone else, or at least have that level of comfortability and that level of confidence that, yes, when Cole and Rezkin are running their 600th key for the week and they need 2 more volunteers for a 10, I just don't want anybody to think that they are not good enough to do that. There are gear considerations, there are skill considerations, there are experiential considerations. I can fix all of that with boot camp, there is also like a crippling level of social anxiety in our guild. That I can help you with. If at the end of the day you just don't want to talk to other people, I'm not trying to be a dick. That's not my problem. So please sign up. Please know that everybody in guild loves you and respects you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I mean, we are jerks at the end of the day. We are rude, exclusionary people that hate 99%
Real elitist
of
assholes.
other human people. The fact that you're in the door already is huge. So don't be disheartened. We are your tribe. Be patient with us, and please sign up. I am by no stretch of the imagination like an MDI expert, so these, for at least my 2 cents, this will be just basics. This will get you a sufficient amount of knowledge to easily get into 10s once your gear level is commensurate with your experience level. Done and dusted. From there, maybe we can talk about an advanced class somewhere down the road, but I think there's enough people out there who can benefit from just a basics course. That's what I want to use my Thursdays for from this point forward. So if there are additional concerns or if there's optimizations I can be making, let me know. But I just, for all of the people who are upset, you have been heard. I'm sorry that it's taken me this long to come up with some kind of a solution. I'm not sure this is it. This is just my best version of a plan. So that's all I got, guys. Any additional questions or thoughts? Speak now or forever hold my peace. Cool. All right.
Probably some people who would do that for you.
Thank you very much for watching.
Why are you so ripped?
Practice.
Lots of working out. Lots of keys.
Yeah. I do want to say I haven't shared this publicly because I don't like talking about myself or my life, but recently with the streaming stuff, I made Twitch affiliate, and the just outpouring of support from you guys in Guild has been overwhelming. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for all that you guys do for me. It's been very rewarding. It was I had put it on a plan, like I was hoping to get it done by 2021, making affiliate. I secretly kind of hoped I could get it done in December, and it happened that quickly. So thank you so much for making that a reality for me. And I guess with that, I will show you my new outro. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week for another officer chat. Take care, and I'll see you guys tonight for raid.